Alright, so I'm going to show you how to round numbers using two different strategies. One, rounding numbers on a number line, and two, using the rounding shortcut, okay, or just another method to rounding, okay? So let me just go through this page, and I think you'll pick up on some things on the way, okay? So it says use the number lines to round each number. Be sure to label the tick marks on the number line, okay? So here I'm going to round 3 6/10 to the nearest whole number. Well, I always like to underline the value that I'm rounding. So I'm rounding to the nearest whole number, so I'm going to underline my ones, place my wholes. Here I have 3 6/10. So I know then it's going to be between the whole numbers of 3 and 4, okay? And if I think about what's right in the middle, well, what's right in the middle of 3 and 4? Well, 3.5, or 3 and 5/10, okay? So if I had a label where 3 6/10 would go, well, 3 and 6/10 is past 3 and 5/10, okay? So I could label 3 and 6/10 about there, and then I could see that, hey, 3 and 6/10 is here. Here's my halfway mark. So to the nearest whole number, 3 and 6/10 is closest to 4. So my rounded number would be 4, and in this case, I rounded up. Okay, I rounded up to 4. Okay, my arrow up to 4. Another way to think about it is if I have 3 and 6/10, okay, well, I'm going to underline again the digit that I'm rounding, which is my whole number, and I'm just going to look to the right. And if that digit is 5 or higher, I'm going to round up. If it's less than 5, then I'm going to round down. So if I look to the right, I see that I have 6 in the tenths place. So that's higher than 5, so I need to round it up to 4. So 3 and 6/10 rounded to the nearest whole number is 4. Okay. So let me do another one. I have 2 and 73 hundredths to the nearest tenth here. So let me put this one in blue. Okay, so if I have 2 and 73 hundredths, I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, so I'm going to underline my tenths place. So I know I have 2 and 7/10 then. And then my next tenth up would be 8/10. Okay, if I added 1/10 to 7/10, so I know I'm going to be between 2 and 7/10 and 2 and 8/10. So now I need to think about what's in the middle. And we did show in class how you could attach a trailing zero here to help you come up with that middle number. So now you have 2 and 70 hundredths, which is the same as 2 and 7/10, and 2 and 80 hundredths, which is the same as 2 and 8/10. So what would be right in the middle? 2 and 75 hundredths. Okay, 75 is in the middle between 70 and 80. So now I need to plot 2 and 73 hundredths. Well, 2 and 73 hundredths would probably be somewhere around here. Okay, so I can see that 2 and 73 hundredths isn't even to my halfway point yet. So to the nearest tenth, it's closer to 2 and 7/10. So my rounded number, and I just want to say it to the nearest tenth, so I'm not going to include that trailing zero that I had. Sorry about that. So to the nearest tenth, it's 2 and 7/10, and in this case, okay, I rounded down. So in this case, I would say round it down. So let's look at the other method, using the rounding shortcut. So 2 and 73 hundredths to the nearest tenth. Again, I have 7/10. Okay, I'm just going to peek to the right. That number is less than 5, so I'm just going to keep the tenths that I have. I'm going to round it down to 2 and 7/10. Okay, if it was larger than 5, then I would have rounded up to 2 and 8/10. All right. So now we're going to take that same number, 2 and 73 hundredths, but this time round it to the nearest whole number. So I'm rounding my nearest whole number. So 2 and 73 hundredths, I know will be between 2 holes. My next hole up would be 3 holes. Well, right in the middle would be 2 and 5/10, or 2.5. So 2 and 73 hundredths, here I have 7/10, so my halfway mark is 5/10. Then 2 and 73 hundredths would be somewhere over there, okay? So past the halfway mark, so 2 and 73 hundredths, I would round that up to 3, okay, because it's past my halfway mark. So my rounded number would be 3 in this case, and I rounded up, okay? Again, let's look at using our shortcut. So 2 and 73 hundredths. Underline my whole number. I'm going to peek over to the right to my tenths place. Here, my tenths have 7/10, so that's 5 or larger. So I need to round that up to 3, okay? So now I'm going to round 4 and 254 thousandths to the nearest hundredth. So again, I'm going to underline my hundredths place. So in 4 and 254 thousandths, I have at least 4 and 25 hundredths. And if I want one more hundredth, so one more hundredth from 25 hundredths would be 26 hundredths. So it's going to be between 4 and 25 hundredths and 4 and 26 hundredths. Now again in class, to help us think of what's that midpoint between 4 and 25 hundredths and 4 and 26 hundredths, you could attach a trailing zero because it doesn't change the value of the number. So what's in the middle between 250 and 260? 4 and 255 thousandths, okay? So 4 and 254 thousandths is close to my midpoint, so maybe it's somewhere around there. So that would be 4 and 254 thousandths, okay? Well, it's close to it, but it's not quite there, so I'm going to have to round it down to 4 and 25 hundredths. So I rounded down in this case. And again, let's use my rounding shortcut to show you. So 4 and 254 thousandths, okay? Well, in 4 and 254 thousandths, I'm trying to round to the nearest hundredth, so here's my hundredths placed. I'm going to look to my thousandths to the right. It's less than 5, so I'm going to round down. I'm going to keep everything that I have, 4 and 25 hundredths, okay? So now let me round 4 and 254 thousandths, that same number, to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to underline my tenths place, so I know it's going to be between 4 and 2 tenths, and my next tenth up, which would be 4 and 3 tenths, okay? So again, I could attach a trailing zero to help me think about that midpoint. So I have 4 and 20 hundredths and 4 and 30 hundredths, okay? So right in the middle between 20 and 30 would be 4 and 25 hundredths. And I have 4 and 254 thousandths. So again, I could attach that. That's 4 and 250 thousandths. So 4 and 254 thousandths would be right beyond that line, okay? So with this method, you can definitely see then here, I'm going to actually round that up to 4 and 3 tenths, okay? So I would round that up. Now, using the shortcut method, okay, it's a little less clear, but we can still use it. 4 and 254 thousandths. And I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, so I'm going to underline my tenths place. I'm going to look to the right. So in my hundredths place, I have 5. So remember, if the digit to the right is 5 or greater, we're going to round up. So since it's 5, okay, I'm going to round that 4 and 2 tenths up to 4 and 3 tenths, my next tenth up, okay? Let's just do one more. Let's finish this page off. So I have 4 and 254 thousandths, and this time I'm rounding it to the nearest whole number. So I know it's going to be between 4 and 5, okay? And right in the middle would be 4.5. Well, 4 and 254 thousandths, I only have 2 tenths. I need at least 5 tenths to get halfway, so I know it's going to be back here somewhere. 4 and 254 thousandths, so I could see that it's closer to 4. So my rounded number would be 4. And in this case, I round it down, okay? So in 4 and 254 thousandths, again, just showing the shortcut, underline my hole, so I have 4 holes, look to the right, oh, it's less than 5, so I round down to 4, okay? So that's just a little review on how you can round decimals to the nearest tenth, hundredth, and whole number.